Hey guys, this is Gamer Sophist. I'm Flying Ninja Dragon Fury, and today I'm going to talk about these new cards coming out in everyone's new favorite potty time addiction, Marvel Snap. These cards are going to be dropping soon, or maybe they're already out by the time you're watching, but I'm going to look at each one and see where it might fit into the meta and give some suggestions on how to use them. I'll be going through the Series 4 cards in this video. Be sure to check out the follow-up video. Remember as well to smash those like and subscribe buttons. It's been statistically proven that following these directions can improve your chances of getting the card you want out of a cache by 0.000000001%. Statistical analysis pending. Well, without further ado, let's get started. The first card we're going to be talking about is She-Hulk. On initial glance, this card seems so-so. Skip turn 3 in order to get it down at a 3 cost on turn 4. Seems like a decent trade, 10 power for 3 energy. Remember though that you skipped your turn 3 to do this. I mean, maybe Sunspot is a way to take more advantage of this, because you skipped a turn and for a 4 investment, you're taking away 14 power. So now we're talking, right? What about Infinite? Well, it seems interesting because you're skipping a turn, but the math has a hard time working out, because if you skip turn 5, She-Hulk is still going to cost 1, meaning you don't have the energy for the Infinite play. You can't really use Psylocke either, because she's being counterproductive, and doesn't let you skip your turn 5 in order to play Infinite, so that doesn't work. Maybe play Electro earlier in the game? Well, you wouldn't be able to play both She-Hulk and Infinite if Electro's on the table, but apparently if Electro gets destroyed, you'll still have the +1 energy, and the ongoing effect of 1 card a turn is gone. Okay, so that's something. Play Electro early, destroy him with Carnage, Deathlock, or Venom, skip turn 5, and then you can drop a 30 power bomb on turn 6. If you played Sunspot as well, that's an effective 36 energy because you're skipping turn 5 and feeding the energy to Sunspot. Okay, 36. That's a great number, and that's a pretty heavy combo. It's not unattainable, but you need to drop Electro on turn 3, and you have to have one of your cards available to destroy him on turn 4, skip turn 5, snap, and then drop your bomb on turn 6. Not bad, right? Thinking about cost reduction, now we see the deadliest of combos, and it involves everybody's favorite card in the world, Wave. Imagine this. Early game you get your Destroy on, and manage to whack 4 cards. Turn 5, you drop Wave. So now, you're banking 2 energy, which is reducing She-Hulk's cost by 2. Now, on turn 6, as everything defaults to a 4 cost, you can do some craziness. Drop Death for free, as you killed 4 cards to make her cost 0 because of Wave. Drop She-Hulk for 2 because her cost was reduced by 2. You're left with 4 energy to play another card. If you're dropping Hulk or Magneto, you are seeing a drop of 34 over 3 cards on turn 6. If you use Giganto, then you're seeing 36, but that's a bit too limiting. Now, what's attractive about this combo is it's a little bit less limiting than the other. You really aren't straying from the regular Death Wave game plan, just adding 1 more card in She-Hulk. It is dependent on killing 4 units as opposed to the regular 2 required for the Death Wave combo, but the payoff is quite spectacular. I wonder if there's a way to stuff the Electro Infinite combo into there as well, as maybe a backup to not drawing Wave before turn 5. It's definitely a possibility, but it seems that it makes the strategy a little bit frail, because Electro needs to die and needs to be dropped turn 3, so it's not a reliable include. Death Wave is already a top tier deck, and with the addition of She-Hulk, you're suddenly taking your potential through the ceiling. Well, I guess you've got to throw in your favorite 6 cost as well, Magneto, Hulk, maybe Giganto, but you've already included one of those for the standard double drop Wave combo anyway, so I think that this card is a winner. Next up we've got Titania. Now here's an interesting card. 1 for 5 is pretty enticing, and it cries to make it work. But how? Drop her turn 1, and then turn 2 your opponent is dropping the card of their choice and stealing her. That's not fair. I guess you can always steal her back, so maybe she'll have a place in zoo decks that tend to drop a lot of cards throughout the game. However, there's a more interesting scenario where she could be useful, and that is contesting locations that the enemy has already filled. You can drop 5 power on one of those locations for a mere 1 energy, which is not bad counterplay at all. Again, I think this may see play in zoo decks, but it could serve as a decent counter card to anyone who's flooding their board with cards. As an afterthought, when the opponent steals her, you could always goblin them to take the Titania back and clog up their side so hopefully they can't steal her again. She's also not a terrible play on turn 6 if you don't have initiative, and are dropping her plus a 5 drop. That's because if the other side has initiative, then you're making the final play, and they don't have an opportunity to play another card to steal Titania one more time. Next up is Luke Cage. Now here's a situational tech card. He can help you out with some of those power diminishing sights, but including a deck just for that is, well, probably not the best. His ability is ongoing, so he may work in some Spectrum deck, and he does pair well with Lizard. The best uses, though, it seems at the outset, are with Typhoid Mary, who suddenly becomes a 4/10 with no drawback if you've got Cage on the board. That's not a bad power swing. And they're both ongoing, so they could fit into some Spectrum setup. But no, the real use is with Hazmat. Hazmat decks are pretty rare right now, and extremely troll. But now, imagine if you're doing the Wong Hazmat Odin combo with your Luke Cage on the board. That would win games, and it doesn't even interrupt your tempo. Next up, we've got Absorbing Man. And this card looks like it has some crazy hidden potential that's going to come out within 5 seconds of us actually getting to play it. It's Mystique, but for on reveal. The trouble with this is his cost. At 4, he's pretty hard to play along with other stuff. Even late game, he's just going to be able to double up a Star-Lord or maybe a Korg, though on turn 5 that's not very impactful. Also, you just drop 5 power on turn 5. If your opponent doesn't snap at this point, they're probably playing the wrong game. So what if we thought backwards? It copies the ability of the last card you played, meaning you can drop them on turn 4 and dupe an on-reveal ability you played on turn 3. Ironheart is the one that stands out for me, not to mention you can then Wong turn 5 and Odin turn 6, which would create a heck of a lot of power going to your other cards. Like those 1 or 2 drops you played on the first 2 turns? Okay, maybe not the best. It's also tricky because this is competing with Wong for your turn 4 drop. Hey, maybe you can use it to double Morph? I know Morph is a real love-hate relationship, and the risk of paying 4 for a random card in the opponent's hand is even higher than the 3 that Morph himself costs. To be fair, the only real value I find for Morph is in Sarah decks, where you're paying 2 for him on turn 6. So I'm going to pass on this crazy idea. There's even a question as to whether Absorbing Man would even copy Morph's ability, since Morph morphed into something else last turn. If anyone has any cool ideas for Absorbing Man combos, feel free to write it in the comments. Next up, we've got Maria Hill, and at first glance, this seems like a bad card. You're nerfing your turn 2 with only a 3 power drop in order to get a random 1-cost card. Sure, there are good 1-cost cards that you'd be happy to get, but there's also really, really bad ones, and I'm not even talking about Misty Knight. Imagine getting an Ebon Maw on turn 4, or a 0 in a deck where you like all your abilities. What if you got a Rock? Or better yet, the Power Stone, which is completely useless unless you're playing a Thanos deck. I suppose the only niche use for this I can think of is in Devil Dino, as it is satisfying the condition of refilling your hand. It's fun that with Quinjet you'd be able to play it for free, but I think that's a bit counterproductive in a Dino deck, not to mention the possibility of getting something completely useless. Sentinel seems like the better choice here. Speaking of random cards, Agent Coulson comes in next, but I think he's actually marginally better than Maria Hill. First, he's producing 2 cards in your hand, which is good for Dino, and secondly, he's enforcing a turn 4, turn 5 optimal energy curve on play. I'm sure you could get some winners with this, but the random aspect is just scary to me, particularly since you get more specialization of cards in this cost range, and I feel the chances of getting something useless are even higher. I think he would be way cooler if he drew a random 4 and 5 card cost from your deck. then you could do something with him by only having 1 or 2 cards of these costs to be able to laser focus which cards you're fishing. In conclusion, I think this card might find a place in Dino decks, as there aren't a lot of good 3-cost plays in them anyway, except for Cosmo of course, and for people that like to throw caution to the wind and play with what fate throws at them. Next up is Helicarrier. And this is one of those cards that I swear I'm missing something. It seems like it has a lot of stuff going on. At 610, it's not the worst 6-cost play you could make in a pinch, but it's definitely not the best. It is, however, not the worst revival choice in the world for Hela or Ghost Rider, which is probably the only place this card is going to see play. 3 random cards though, I don't know, I'm not a fan. Well, I guess it potentially gives you fodder to throw away for your ahead-of-the-curve discards like Blade or Swordmaster, but I'm not sure that's going to be enough of a reason for anyone to play this. Next up is M'Baku, and man, I want to love you. But how is this guy only 2 power? I guess it's because he's a vegetarian. Interesting card here, but suffers the same issue as Angel, in that if he makes it to your hand, he's pretty worthless, and he doesn't even benefit from Washington like Misty Knight does. I think this one's a pass. It might be a fun surprise at the end of District X games. Next is Attuma, and this one is puzzling, but I've managed to come up with a couple of scenarios that might be useful. On the surface, it looks like a bad version of Namor, who is already a questionable play anywhere outside of Pool 1. You can play cards on your Namor location later and just sacrifice 5 power, whereas this guy will just peace out on you. So what's he good for? I think what we need to look at is the actual number on the card, and take advantage of that. He's not the worst discard fodder to Dracula, but definitely not the best either. No, the power of this card rests with another card on this list, Shuri. Played after Shuri, he would be a whopping 20 power, which outstrips Destroyer and doesn't require a whole deck to set up, and he's also just a 4 energy cost. People skip a whole turn to drop Infinite, who's the only number that can compete with this. As a fun bonus, dropping this guy on Shuri's lab would produce a similar result, but seriously, good luck winning that location with just 20 power. Last but certainly not least, we've got Orka. Now here's a whale of a card, pun intended. He's a 14-point play if he's hitting an empty location, which is above the curve for a turn 6 play. Giganto compares to him, but is way more limited as it can only be played in the left location, which knowing your luck was stormed on turn 3 anyway. Still, because of that, this may be a decent option for a turn 6 drop. Though to be fair, I think the only people that play Giganto are Jubilee players, and this card would suck in Jubilee. So there's the upcoming Series 4 cards. I'm super excited about She-Hulk, as you can see, and I think she's the one that stands above the rest. Luke Cage has some interesting applications, and may see hazmat decks actually become relevant. Mind you, if that happens, Luke Cage is the counter to that as well. Does that mean we're going to see a Luke Cage meta? You saw it here first. And shout out to NoGuard on Discord for coming up with the She-Hulk wave combo. Well, I hope you liked our video today and got some valuable insights. In the meantime, keep making those 180 IQ plays, because that's what Dante would do if he was a gamer. Until next time.